There is a specific kind of silence that only exists after 2 a.m. It's not peaceful. It's the suffocating feeling that the entire world has abandoned you. No cars, no voices, only the hum of electricity pulsing through the walls, and the sound of your own thoughts growing louder and louder inside your head. Arthur knew this silence better than anyone, because Arthur barely slept anymore. London, 2:47 a.m. A thin drizzle blurred the windows of his 13th floor apartment like long, cold tears. The city lights below no longer felt human. They looked like eyes, thousands of burning eyes staring out from the dark. Arthur stood by the window for a very long time, too long. His gray t-shirt was wrinkled from days of continuous wear. His cheeks were hollowed, his eyes bloodshot, yet burning with an unnatural intensity. He wasn't tired. At least, he didn't think he was. Behind him, the apartment was terrifyingly empty. No paintings, no TV, no plants, no family photos. Nothing to prove a human being actually lived there. Everything had been discarded. Arthur called it optimization. Others would call it sick. He walked over to the only wooden desk in the center of the room and opened his laptop. The screen flared to life, reflecting his pale face. A single file appeared, Project Wakefulness, Day 1. Arthur smiled, a tiny, cold smile. Humans sleep too much, he whispered. 1/3 of our lives just spent unconscious. Arthur believed he was different, and difference always comes with solitude. The idea started after an article he read at 4 a.m. Polyphasic sleep. Instead of 8 hours, humans could sleep multiple short naps. Total sleep time, 2 hours. In exchange, 22 hours of wakefulness. 22 hours to work, to think, to evolve. Arthur believed this was the next step for humanity, and he would be the first to take it. But by the afternoon, reality began to bend. 3:12 p.m. Arthur felt the first wave of drowsiness. It didn't feel like exhaustion. It felt like something heavy dragging him down to the bottom of a dark ocean. Slow, suffocating, irresistible. He set an alarm for 20 minutes and lay directly on the cold floor. When the alarm went off, Arthur bolted upright. His heart was hammering. His head spun for a few seconds, and then a terrifying sensation of absolute clarity surged through his body. His brain felt tightly stretched. Every sound became hyper-amplified. He could hear the water rushing through the pipes of the apartment above, the vibrations of wires inside the walls, the precise ticking of a neighbor's clock. Arthur smiled, but this time his smile trembled.
8 p.m. The city began to sleep. Finally, only his apartment remained illuminated. He went into the bathroom. The cold, white fluorescent light flickered to life. Arthur stared into the mirror and froze. In the corner of the mirror, something moved, extremely fast. Arthur whipped his head around. The living room was empty, just darkness. He let out a weak laugh. Sleep deprivation, hallucinations. But as he turned back to the mirror, his blood ran cold. In those few seconds, his reflection had not turned its head at the same time. He did. His hands trembled as he pulled up the security camera feed on his phone. He replayed the footage from 30 seconds ago. The video was grainy, black and white. There he was, standing in front of the mirror. Arthur watched his digital self turn his head, and then his heart stopped beating. The screen showed that after he turned away, the reflection in the mirror stayed behind. It stared out of the screen, smiling at him, before slowly, very slowly, turning its head to match. A 2-second delay. His own reflection was lagging, and as Arthur backed away in terror, his foot stepped into something cold. He looked down. On the dry floor was a single, wet footprint, leading out from the bathroom. Panic, pure, raw panic, seized him. Arthur scrambled to his feet and ran toward the front door. His breath came in ragged gasps. He grabbed the handle and twisted the deadbolt. Click, click, locked. He leaned his forehead against the cold wood. His heart was a frantic drum against his ribs. I'm alone, he whispered. But then he remembered the footprint. The footprint led out from the bathroom into the living room, where he was standing right now, in the dark. 2 a.m. The silence of the apartment was broken, not by a sound in the shadows, but by the sharp, piercing ring of his smartphone on the desk. Arthur flinched. His eyes snapped to the glowing screen. The caller ID was blank. No number, no name, just a flashing text. Unknown control. His finger hovered over the screen, trembling. He didn't want to answer, but the ringing felt heavy, like a demand. He pressed answer and put the phone to his ear. At first, there was only static, the sound of empty space. Then, a voice spoke. It wasn't a stranger. It was a soft, flat voice, and it said, "Arthur, why are you still awake?" The blood in his veins turned to ice. It was his own voice. Exactly, his own voice, but it sounded empty, as if it was spoken by something that had no lungs. Click. The line went dead. The heavy silence swallowed the room once more. Arthur stood frozen, the phone still pressed to his cold ear. His eyes darted around the pitch-black space, and then, from the darkness behind him, deep within the empty living room, he heard it, the distinct, wet sound of a slow footstep. Chop. Something was in the apartment with him, and it was right behind his back. Day 4, 96 hours, without a single blink of sleep. Arthur didn't run. He didn't scream. Instead, a manic energy took over his mind. He slammed his hands onto the keyboard. The laptop screen illuminated his gaunt face with a sickly blue glow. He began to code, lines of algorithms flashing across the monitor like a digital waterfall. His fingers moved with unnatural speed. Click, clack, click, clack. He was no longer just an architect. He was reshaping human biology. Day 7, 168 hours. The human body has a breaking point. Arthur had passed it. He sat frozen at his desk. His eyes were wide open, bloodshot, raw. The muscles in his eyelids were paralyzed, stiff. He couldn't blink. He couldn't close them, even if he tried. The cool air from the room dried his corneas. It's burning. A thin layer of tears spilled down his hollow cheeks. But it wasn't from sadness. It was the body crying for mercy. And then the screen went black, not because the laptop died, but because the light was being sucked out of the room. The digital lines of code on the monitor turned into liquid, melting, dripping down the keyboard like black blood. Arthur tried to stand, but his legs felt like stone in the reflection of the dead laptop screen. He didn't see his face. He saw the room behind him. The dark corridor was wide open, and something was crawling out on all fours, slowly, dripping wet. The heavy, wet dragging sound came closer. Arthur's heart was a trapped bird, battering his ribs. He wanted to look away. He wanted to scream. But his paralyzed eyes remained locked onto the screen. And then, it wasn't a reflection anymore. A pair of long, pale, waterlogged hands reached out from the darkness and grabbed the edges of his desk. The thing pulled itself up. It climbed onto his lap. Its skin was gray, dripping with cold water. As it leaned in, inches away from his face, Arthur's breath hitched. It had his face, exactly his face, but its eyes were hollow black holes, and it whispered in his own voice, "Now we can sleep." The next morning, the sun rose. Light flooded the apartment once more. The screen was clean. No melting code, no black blood. The bathroom mirror reflected only an empty room. Arthur still sat at his desk. The laptop was off. His body was completely motionless. His eyes remained wide open, staring straight ahead. The tears had dried, leaving tight, silver streaks on his skin. The nightmare from the night before was gone, but so was his reality. He was awake. He would always be awake. He could see the dust motes dancing in the sunlight. He could hear the birds outside, but he couldn't move a muscle. He couldn't blink. He was a prisoner inside a temple of permanent consciousness, and deep inside, his unblinking eyes, in the tiny reflection of the window, the dark figure was still sitting there, right behind him, waiting for the light to fade again. 192 hours, and the clock is still ticking.